Promised a long time back to Jake Ziegler when I drug this thing out of the barn that I'd talk about the liquid starter system on it. And boy, I'm way behind on pulling planter out for the year. This was a 1st of March job, not a nearly 1st of April job, but here we are. And if weather was better, we might even be planting right now. It's warm, but how a man can go from drowning to drought as fast as we did is amazing to me. But we need some rain here. And our soils, even though they're not light soils, they, we can hold about 2 weeks worth of water, and that's about all we can hold here. Even though we're not sandy, it's just our topsoil is not that deep in most places. So, but I'm sure it'll change. It always does. So here is the beginnings of it. That actually used to be a hay inoculant tank and setup. We used to use it. I used it a couple years on hay inoculant. I never did really do very well using liquid hay inoculant, so we took it off, and you can see actually that right there's used to bolt to the tractor frame, and we just put it on a bracket and pinched it down. Still use the variable pump. I've had half dozen pumps on here. I may have to put a pump on this time. About 2 seasons about winds up a pump. I have a controller for it, a little variable, just a little knob on and off, and you turn to speed up or slow down. That's where you get your rate from. So we'll move to the back here. Excuse me. To this homemade manifold right here. And we were getting too much flow when we first put it together. So we actually took a rivet out of a 15-gallon soap drum handle. Plastic rivet is the same size as that poly pipe. Put it inside and bored a hole. Kept making the hole bigger till we got our flow right. That black line is foam marker line. And so we run it out to the rows down through here. And we're using twin line Keatons. There's other ways to do that. I mean, there's some guys do it on the seed tube guard, and that's great. If you want to do it on the seed tube guard, that's fine. I'm not saying there's a right or wrong way. I needed Keatons when I redone this planter. I didn't have any Keatons, and so I thought, well, I'm just going to go ahead and buy the ones with the internal lines, and it's got the little splitter on the back, where of course it applies it to both sides of the furrow. But that's about the long and short of the system. It's just pretty much homemade and cobbled up. If I had to do it over, that's a 50-gallon tank, 5-gallon rate, 10 acres, and that's all, And if I could do it over, I never measured the diameter. I'd like to have had a John Deere 70-gallon. If I had a 70-gallon, that'd work great, because then I could go, if I wanted to go do 12 acres, I have 2 fields of 12 acres. I wouldn't have to bother with taking the tank, and it's not a big deal to take the tank. Just take a loader and hold it up there and put a little in, but I could load enough to go, of course. Bought this planter back in 7, and it was a piece of junk. And some people might even go so far as to say it still is. It was a wide when I first got it, and I planted with it as a wide till 2011. And the guy that used to do all our mechanic work, he moved my carriage. He made 2 new brackets and moved my wheels over so that I could slide my units in enough to go. We just bored new holes in the rod, just slid it all in and made it into a 30. So I had to section the markers to bring it in. But 4-row narrows around here are hard to come up with. They're just are. When everybody around here that planted used to plant with a 4-row wide, if they went to 30, they went to a 6-row. So 4-row narrows never were really bought in this part of the world very much. We run double disc on the fert. We do use the dry fert. My augers are in the shop. I keep 2 pieces of PVC pipe with caps on the end, stand them up. When I get through in the spring, when I get through planting, I drop my augers off in there. They're completely full of used oil, and they just sit in there and soak till I get them back out. That's one thing about fert on a planter. If you're running much fertilizer on a planter, you're going to deal with some rust. And that's just, I guess, the nature of the beast. We run a 13 wave. There's three schools of thought: wavies, smooths, and none. You can no-till with none. You can no-till without a lead. In our soil around here, I don't like a smooth or a bubble coulter. I just don't. If you got a lot of clay, you'll usually wind up pressing the side walls out too much. None won't work here. We've got rock. I didn't say we had stones. We got rocks. And you got to have a little something to help take the lick for your opener. If you don't, your openers are going to be crashing. And we got, I mean, there's rocks around here the size of a trash can lid that are right under the surface of the ground, and they're way bigger than that tractor. So you got to have something to help out. I like to keep these older. If I change these, I change those. I prefer to have these more worn. I like to be plunging a little deeper with my opener than I do with my lead. Those Keatons are mounted to the shank. They're shank mounts. They're not seed tube mounts. The older zip tie style, they've worked for a lot of folks for a lot of years. I don't like them because I don't like the notion of shaking that seed tube. Vibrating it with that Keaton, you're messing up the seed flow. That's my opinion of it anyway. The meters aren't in. They're just stock meters. I don't have precision meters or anything like that. I needed gauge arms. That's kind of what got me started. Now, most of what's on here is SI, and that's because my John dealer had 3 of these arms, sets of these arms in stock. I only needed 1 more. They've got the cam where I can adjust the pitch. I can pitch the tire in, out, or back a little against the opener so I can tighten them up or loosen them up. And there's times, depending on the soil conditions, I'll change them a little bit. Been pretty happy with those. These trailing arms, I needed some. I had to buy them all, so I bought T-handles. These have the cams. Oh, hold on, let me get you can see that. These have the cams right here where you can loosen and turn that cam and square the closing frame to the row. I think I've got one on here that does need. I think this one on this side's a little off. I'll probably square it. It is a little off. I'll square it up when we get ready to start. These wheels I love. These are S&I fingertails. They get all that sidewall compaction out. You can run conventional just as good as you can run no-till. I've planted conventional ground with them. You can just about just dump the pressure off and just run. They do a great job. When I built this thing, and these are water pump style bearings. When I did, that's one mistake I did make when I bought these. Why on earth I didn't buy them as knockoff wheels? I just didn't. But when I first put that planter together, back in, I overhauled it completely in 9. For some dumb reason, I put it back together exactly like I bought it. I had rubber closing wheels on it. And I just put them brand new, because they were all trashed, and I just bought a brand new set and put them back on there. And we planted about 2 crops. We were starting a no-till, and I just couldn't close one year. I could not get them closed. It was wet. It was getting late. Ground was packing in. And so Dad got up one morning early, and he went to the John Deere dealer, and he come in with 8 brand new solid casts. And we knocked them rubbers off and throwed them 8 brand new solid casts on there, and I planted 1 crop with them solid casts. And I took them right back off. I didn't like them. I had hatchet root like you wouldn't believe. It was just a mess. It was a wet spring, mind you. And it was wet, and when it was like right now, when it went from wet to dry, it was that fast. We baked out those trenches and then had to sit there for nearly 4 weeks waiting on rain. These do an outstanding job. It's just a bridge between running a true spike and running a spike and a wheel. But I really do like them. I've got them in the stagger. I run mine staggered out. But you know, I know it ain't pretty and it ain't fancy, but I've been for what it is. I've been fairly happy with the thing. It does a pretty respectable job of putting seed in the ground. It's not accurate. I mean, it's not like the new planters would be. I mean, we can't do the tricks they do. But you know, for a guy that's going to plant about 30 acres of corn a year, it does fine. One thing, now of course, you see it hitched right there, it's just hooked on, but this stack of washers, on this tractor to plant with, that whole stack of washers goes on top of that drawbar to get the planter back on the closing wheels. You know, that hitch right there, goodness gracious, unless you're hooking to a D4 Caterpillar, I don't know what would fill up that drawbar. Excuse me, I have had some kind of crud for about a week now. As far as starter goes, I didn't order much this year. $7.50 a gallon, 5-gallon rate. That gets kind of pricey. I bought enough to do my early corn, and might have enough to get over into some of the later. My goal is actually, I've been using some micronutrient products for at least a decade, from Delta Ag, and my goal is to use up my regular starter. I would like to actually be in the field when I run out, and then go with starting trying some micronutrients in furrow, where I can have run out of fertilizer on a furrow and go to micronutrients on the next furrow, because that may be where I have to go. Because I was asking about it, they only had a little bit to send of the other. I got 75 gallons of it, and they said if you want any more, you'll have to buy a 275-gallon tank. No, I'm not buying a 275-gallon tank at $7.50 a gallon. That's just not going to happen. But as far as the different starters I've used, this is an Upstart. It's a 6-20-6. I believe Nature's makes it. It does a good job. Been happy with it. Before that, I ran Nature's, name brand Nature's, for 2 seasons. It was a 6-24-6. It's an orthophosphate product. Before that, to start off with, the first I ever used, I used twice. I bought it at Southern States in Franklin, Kentucky. 6-18-6 with a Vale and zinc. The Andersons blend it, and then Southern States buys it from the Andersons to resell. I was tickled with that stuff. I really liked using it. It was a polyphosphate. The reason why I quit using it was the 3rd year I was going to use it, called them up, they was out. So that year we went to Southern County, Lawrence County, and got some Sterix, like a 517-3 or something or other. I don't know. I think I could have drank it, and it would have probably never even given me heartburn. It just wasn't enough. I believe theirs is a reconstituted powder, and they kept bragging about it was a super low salt product, but it was a super low fertilizer product too. I was terribly unhappy with it. What's the difference in poly and ortho? On a dry year, I'd rather have the ortho, but if it's on a wet year, I'd rather have poly. The polys will stick with you. It seems like a whole lot better than the polys. I'm sorry, the polys will stick with you a lot better than the orthos. The orthos being water soluble, if you're getting a lot of rain, it just seems like it dilutes it right on out. But yeah, this is just pretty much, it's just a homemade system. I don't know on a long run how that, I know they still do some electrics on starter, and DeLaval has a fertilizer rated pump. I think it's about $250. That one's $50. So I just been buying the cheap ones and changing them every couple of seasons. I don't know in the long run. I mean, you know, if you pull into a big field, the squeeze pump might be, you know, running the squeeze pump might be a better solution, or a PTO. I know a couple of guys they just run they have a fertilizer rated 5-roller, and they're just running a pressure gauge and turn the ball valve and just turn back to the tank what they don't want, you know, just agitating back what they didn't use off the 5-roller. And they've done okay with that, but this is just something we cobbled it up to see if we were going to want to run starter, and then we just kept using it. But anyhow, that's about enough of me rambling. I do thank y'all for watching, and we will catch y'all later.